Good evening, viewers, and welcome to Afterthoughts. I'm Nadeem Kader. Today, we're going to discuss about the decision by the World Bank to suspend the proposed funding for the proposed mega project, the Padma Bridge. And my guest today is Professor Mohammad Arafat, is a faculty member of the School of Business of the Independent University of Bangladesh, IOB. Welcome to the program again.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you must be also watching and doing some of the research things that you do on this whole affair, because such a decision cannot be, a lot of people say, cannot be released through a press release only. That's a very major decision that has to be conveyed to the government first. Absolutely. And then it goes public.
And came very abruptly.
When there's already an investigation underway. So let's hear from you.
Well, if I can remind you when it started, right from the beginning, it was World Bank who actually sent the message to the bridge department, and they said that there's something wrong going on there, and they can sense of some corruption, and they want to let them know about it. So the bridge department, they responded very quickly. They said, well, what exactly you found out, let us know. We'll cooperate with you. We'll try to fix it. Then they said they're going to send the vice president of the integrity department. She'll come over and then she'll sit with our prime minister. And that's what happened after a while. And our prime minister in the meeting very specifically mentioned that we would want to know exactly what went wrong that you found out. And we were ready to cooperate with everything. We're going to open up. That has been the stand of
the government from the very beginning.
Right from the very beginning. We'll open up all the information, and she also mentioned that is part of our election commitment.
And a very important decision the Prime Minister took was removing the minister from that portfolio.
Exactly. Eventually she's done that also. So, and she said like she wants to do all this, and but she doesn't want this to get stuck into the process and get delayed, the whole thing, because she wanted to start it in her tenure. Then they said, well, they'll let the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister know exactly what went wrong, but when they would visit, they had a subsequent visit to New York, and they said they would let them know in the visit. Then we know after a while they went to New York, and they sat down there again, and here again, there's nothing specific they mentioned, and they said they're going to let the Prime Minister know and the Finance Minister by letter. And they came back, and after a while, when they sent the letter, here again in the letter there was nothing, if you remember.
Yes.
It was sort of like they were killing the time and telling the government nothing, and the government was right from the beginning very, I would say, sort of aggressive about the whole thing. They wanted to find out, and Prime Minister also said she would cut out everything that comes on the way.
Project, and so
she wanted to cut out everything that comes on the way, and she just wanted to take it forward. And as you have mentioned, even the minister was also removed and sent to the other ministry, and even the Anti-Corruption Commission also took up the whole thing to investigate and all that.
The chairman today rejected this allegation, saying that he's still investigating.
No, exactly. Now the thing is, repeatedly our government wanted to know what exactly, precisely, succinctly happened. We wanted to know, and they failed to deliver that. And World Bank, even till yet, none of us in this country has any idea about what exactly happened. We just know that something went wrong, and Mr. Abul Hussain, when was there some kind of corruption. And also one thing I want to mention, that was at the stage where the whole process was, it was very difficult to, that some kind of corruption or something happens at that point of time. It was in the process of evaluation. It was not done. No money was disbursed. But then again, there might be some kind of pre-corruption in the pre-stage of the whole thing. We can say it that way. But in the evaluation, Mr. Ainul Nishad, who's also one of the member of this evaluation committee, Jamil Reza Chaudhary, and their integrity is beyond question. And also, there was one New Zealand company, who was the design consultant. They were also part of this evaluation. So it was not possible, and I hear Mr. Nishad saying yesterday in an interview that the whole evaluation process is like a math. It's 2 + 2, 4 kind of thing. There's no way that you can manipulate the process and get somebody else.
You were mentioning about a Chinese company to me.
Exactly. I'll come back to it. I mean, interestingly, what happened is, in 2011, March, World Bank, interestingly, they rather repeatedly recommended a disqualified Chinese company for the Padma bridge project. And what happened is, they asked the bridge authority to consider and reconsider, but they kept on rejecting it because they did not qualify. They could not meet the requirement. And interestingly, the World Bank was trying to influence the evaluation. and they were trying to recommend that company. And what happened
can
eventually?
the World Bank recommend like this? I mean,
that is the interesting part of it.
Part of the country's decision which company will work.
Not only the part of the countries, but for that there is a specific evaluation committee. They follow a specific process, and that is transparent. And many people are there, and not even the minister has access to this. Not even the minister, even the prime minister can influence the whole thing. And it has to happen the way it should be. But they kept on influencing, and it came out. Last year in March it came out. And then what happened is somehow the project got stuck, and when they found out that Chinese company, they recommended by World Bank, do not fit into this and they do not meet the requirement, the project got stuck. In that 1 year time, they came up with all this, the extra, the additional, whatever the features they needed, and they again participated in the bidding. And then what they've done, it's, you'd be amazed to know, they sent some of the pictures of some of the bridges as part of their project that they have done it, and the evaluation committee found out those pictures are all forged. Those bridges and those construction was done by some other companies, and a company like that was recommended by World Bank, and repeatedly they kept on getting rejected, but they kept on influencing it.
At some point of time, the World Bank was getting upset that its recommendations were not being followed by the government.
Absolutely, and they were rather trying to recommend that company outside the law, outside the rules, and outside the regulations. And that's the most sad and the pathetic part of it. And now, finally, what the nation know, that they withdrew the money and everything because of the corruptions and the corruption allegations. Till yet, they haven't given us any specific, the evidence or anything as such. But in the meantime, I'd like to share some more information with you. In Forbes, in the US, a news came out a few days back. It says the World Bank spins out of control. And it says, corruption, dysfunction awaits the new president. It's about World Bank. The new president, the corruption, dysfunction. And they said, with its $57 billion objectives and failure to contain corruption, a decade of reform efforts have done little to fix the World Bank. It is about World Bank. And they bring out all these allegations against us. And all of a sudden, they, abruptly, they have cancelled it without giving us any specific evidence of this. Whereas you have seen the
very aggressive move.
Absolutely. And as if they wanted to do it, as if they wanted to malign the government, as if they wanted to bring out these allegations and just wanted to downplay the government. I mean, it was not done very objectively and honestly, I would say. In the process itself, I see the corruption. I see the sort of exercising
there are
the
many
authority.
Questions about the decisions. I mean, it's like very pre-planned decision that would come out if something went wrong. And they are also having a change in the leadership of World Bank. So before the president of World Bank goes out, he took his final decision blessed by somebody some quarters.
Exactly. Even the president...
That is one school of thought.
No, of course. Even the president who you're mentioning, he is known to be very diplomatic. He is usually not very blunt. He tries to hide all the downside of World Bank and his performance. But in one occasion he mentioned, referring to a report, he says that the report makes it clear the serious challenges ahead in overcoming the cancer of corruption in operations supported by World Bank. Is zoologic by himself. It was mentioned by him. Just imagine. And it says that even though he's so diplomatic, but unusually he got very blunt and said it. Right? So how do you, take all of this into consideration? And also we know that World Bank do not allow any company, independent company, to audit their performance.
They have their
Those who
own
audit,
auditors.
they are on their payroll. I mean, it's absolutely not transparent organization. And they can take any decision whichever the way they want to. And it's a very autocratic inside.
So where does this mystery lies?
Now what I think is, let me give you another interesting example here. They have done many of the things in the past. You remember Wolfowitz, who was the deputy of Rumsfeld and who was appointed the World Bank president by George Bush in 2005. Right after he, took over, and what happened is he has given a salary raise to one of his romantic partners, 35.5%.
Yes.
Whereas they cannot do it beyond, 12.5% or something. So these are the kind of thing happened in World Bank. Not only this, let me share a few other things. There was research done by Talukdar Munir Zaman. It came out in Cambridge, and what he found out is, in some of the Latin America's country, World Bank funded, most of in most of the time when there was a military rule, they funded more. And rather, compared to when the democracy is there, they did not fund much.
That also goes against the
basic principle, what they overtly say. So, and let me give you another example. Joseph Stiglitz, if you remember, Nobel laureate and economist, he was chief economist of World Bank, and he resigned because of some of the malpractice of World Bank. And right after the recognition, he brought out many allegations. He had many objection against World Bank's performance and all that, and their malpractices. Let me give you another example. Now they're giving the excuse of corruption, whereas they're not showing us anything specific. There's a country in Africa, Lesotho. In that country, what happened is they released their fund in a project where the government of that country sensed some kind of corruption, and World Bank did not do anything. They released fund, and the government of the country took action against the project, and those were into corruption. So they have a sort of, where they want to do it, they don't mind, and where they don't want to do it, they come up with this kind of allegations.
That's what I was saying, that possibly as the process of the project went on, the World Bank was not happy with the response that it was getting from the government in Dhaka.
No, of course.
Not their way. It was following strict...
Absolutely. Let me, the only information that we have, let me tell you what it is, that they said finally. And once they said it, and SEC has taken it up and they're trying to investigate again. But in the meantime, they completely have given no time to the government or anyone. They've just cancelled it. The only information is SNC Lavalin, the Canadian company. They blacklisted it.
In Canada itself.
Canadian side. And Canadian government was investigating that company. And in that process of investigation, when their ex-managing director was interrogated, and he mentioned, that came in the newspaper also, which World Bank also, sent this message to our government, that he mentioned our minister, the then minister, communication, the secretary, and the director of the bridge department. They asked for 10% of this.
Right. That was in some
I was sort of convinced. Let me clarify that to you. This has a very strong prima facie evidence, because it is in the process when the SNC Lavalin was investigated and their managing director was interrogated, this truth came out, which is important to us. And it happened before also in our country. We know it. We know in the previous regime that Tariq Rahman, the son of our leader of the opposition, in a money laundering case, it was investigated by FBI, and then it was caught, and the agent of FBI came down to Bangladesh and testified against him that he money laundered. And it was also against Arafat Rahman Koko. We know about it, that the American government filed a case against Siemens because of bribing some of the influential people in different other countries. And the Siemens was defendant and American government was the plaintiff. But in that process, as a byproduct, we found out Arafat Rahman Koko was one of the bribe taker. So when things like that happens, I see this, I give some authenticity to the whole thing, because I think this is a very strong prima facie evidence. Based on the same principle, I think when the managing director of SNC Lavalin is claiming, and he is saying in the interrogation that Mr. Minister and the Secretary, they asked for this 10%, I was very convinced that there has to be something wrong in there. But when I dig more into it, try to find out more about it, then eventually what I found, look in the title, in the headline, the newspaper said that they asked for 10% of bribe. But you go inside and then you find out the same guy, his name is the managing director, Lavalin, his name is Pierre Douaim. He said it is not from him that the minister has asked for this 10%, but to his representative, the minister's representative, as the 10%.
So who
so
knows?
the two other person in the middle.
Right.
And we know that in our country we have the culture of selling names.
Absolutely.
How do you know? How can you confirm this? So
that's a very important point.
Yeah, this is subject to investigation. So you just cannot bring in allegations against someone. I want to see this very objectively and very honestly. I'm not going to let anyone go just because someone is a minister.
Absolutely. We'll be back. We have to go back to my bridge project. Well, you were talking about the corruptions and other
double
standards, and then
itself.
You were talking about Lavalin, managing director, had his version. So there was initial report was that the minister and the secretary had asked. Then you came upon that there was another two people in between. Who knows who's doing what?
Exactly.
So in that case, that if that is also the fact, then it's even the World Bank as a bank that it stands. It has its lot of controversies. It has over the past years, but as a bank and dealing with a country that is really struggling to go forward, despite we're having floods now.
Absolutely.
But despite that, we're trying to move on. And at a time like this, when they say they're going to move out, what reason would you think they would have specifically, and what you think, as the government is saying that there is other options open? The minister said that the project will go on as planned and on schedule. So there has been a plan B for the government also by this time.
So fortunately, we have a plan B, and the reason we have a plan B because we have taken some initiative 3 years back, 3.5 years back, because for this plan B, I'll tell you what. See, what happens is, to a country like Bangladesh, a third world countries, this has been the basic treatment given to us by the World Bank, muscle flexing and those kind of stuff. And we always say that, some economists, they always say that 0.7, 0.5% is their interest rate. It's pretty, good comparative. On the other hand, if it is from Malaysia, some other countries, it's going to be 6.5. It's going to be very expensive. I agree with that if you're sticking to this interest rate only. But how about the other cost? The cost of capital, if it is from the World Bank, it's very high in many other ways. When you have to submit yourself, you have to compromise your sovereignty. How about the cost of that? So what I suspect, when World Bank brought out these allegations and they tried to impose some of the conditions, but our government kept on saying, no, you have to prove it first. And eventually, after waiting for a while,
yeah, because they went to the Prime Minister.
Yes, after waiting for when the Prime Minister finally, if you remember, in Ganobhavan,
yes,
she, in a press conference, she said, you are the one, she indicating World Bank, that you are the one brought out these allegations, you have to prove it. She sent the ball to their court. And they don't like a leader of a country from a third world country speak in that tone and manner. I mean, meaning she's not submitting herself. So they have to do anything and everything to punish that leadership. I think this is part of what they're doing. This is my understanding.
They got used to the kind of the submissive thing that Bangladesh has to follow in the past years.
That's what they're used to from countries like us. But exactly, our leadership is showing defiance. The leadership is showing self-respect. They're showing that they have sovereignty and independence, and that's how they're behaving and taking this. Also very reasonably and rationally at the same time. What we have done, let me tell you this, that for the last 3.5 years, Bangladesh is being ranked by Moody's and S&P. Moody's and S&Ps are globally recognized institutions, They measure the country risk. Country risk is something that, and Bangladesh is doing very good. For economic potential and other. It is a risk of investment. So if you're not being ranked, and if we're not in the list, then the private sector investor, the commercial investor, the loans, or the investment, they would not know whether their investment is secured there. That's the only way they can get the indications. See, we have been dependent on World Bank all the way. But what we have done is, we have put ourselves in the ranking of Moody's and S&P. And in that way, we're showing that in South Asia we're doing right after India in terms of our economic progress. When America is suffering, Spain is downgraded, when Vietnam is downgraded, Greece is almost going bankrupt, Bangladesh's overall economic outlook is stable. It's being said by S&P and Moody's.
Absolutely.
So we can attract many private sector investors. Whatever the amount of money World Bank has, 1,000 times more money is being held by private sector investor. We can invite and attract them. And we have opened up another window. When we were, in a negotiation with World Bank, and they probably do not negotiate on the interest rate, but they negotiate with other things, as I said. And most of our economists have never expressed those costs into the monetary terms. If we did, then we would see it is not 0.75%, it's much higher than this. But the private sector investor, the commercial, the loans and whatever, they come into any other, in Bangladesh or goes into any other country with a straight intention of making business. There's nothing else, no politics, nothing into it, and they're very transparent. They want to see whether their investment is secured. They want to see whether the return on investment is enough for them to go and invest. So we have opened up another window. Now we can go, which we did not have it before. Now we can go, and it's not only Malaysia, it's Dubai, South Korea, it's America, UK, many other countries, and their private investors are showing interest to come to Bangladesh and invest in here. And let me give another example. Malaysia did not develop the countries by taking World Bank's money. South Korea did not do it. Many of the countries has made development by inviting the private sector investment, and in a very fair process, because it might sound that 0.75 to 6.5 is higher, but many ways it's lower. And some people might say, then why were we negotiating with World Bank then in the first place? My question is, we negotiated so that it is only 0.75%, but when we found out it is more than that, then it did not work out eventually. That's why it would better go with the private sector investor, and that's how I want to say it.
Right. So basically, we have to think of Plan B now.
Of course.
And the government is on the right track.
It was going simultaneously. The government is on the right track, and I thank to the government. All of a sudden, if you have to think about Plan B, it would be a problem. But they planned it before. That's why the S&P and Moody's has been ranking us for last 3.5 years. It's not that we all of a sudden, otherwise we would not be able to invite the private sector investor, because they have to make sure their investment is secured. So we're in a position to invite them. We're in a position to open up another window. We're in a position to offload some of our things to somewhere else, not being submitting ourselves to World Bank and getting muscle flexed by them all the time.
Right. Do you have any insight on the Plan B?
What I think is, I think that many of the investors are showing interest, and I think we have to get used to out of our traditional mindset and traditional the approach that we have made so far to the modern approach. Like most of the countries, how they have developed, we have to look into this, and accordingly we have to move forward. And it's much fair, trust me, the private sector investment is much more fairer, I mean, compared to what this donor agencies fund is. So I think we should move forward. Even in the US itself, most of the streets and the highways and all that have the tollways and all that. Let's do it like this. And when we're building the Padma bridge, we're not closing down the other options which we're using now. So even if it is a bit higher for the time being, it should be fine. Those who can opt for it, they'll do it. Go for that option. Those who can't, they'll use the traditional way. So it's all win-win in my opinion. I think instead of submitting ourselves, compromising our sovereignty, the Plan B would be a better choice.
Exactly. And the last question before we wind up, it's about corruption. Isn't it time we think that all the member countries also try to investigate the corruption in the World Bank?
I absolutely agree with you. Having said what I've said so far, the World Bank's corruption and all that, that does not mean that I'm trying to justify the kind of corruption that you have at our end. Bangladesh, being a third world country, we have corruption, widespread corruption everywhere. And this
situation has improved.
No, it is there, but then again, it is widespread, and it cannot improve it overnight. This is also true. But I think my recommendation or expectation, whichever you call it, that if the government can strengthen a bit more the ACC, then I think I have no doubt about the commitment of Sheikh Hasina as a Prime Minister. I think for herself, she wants to be very clear about it, and I think some institutional reforms can be taken. Some new laws can be enacted and enforced properly, and that's why we have to fight corruption. Corruption is a big cost of capital, trust me.
Right. Thank you. We've run out of time. So sorry. We wish we could continue. Thank you so much once again. Reviewers, I guess we have an insight to this whole episode, and it's good that we are trying to find a Plan B without submitting ourselves, without going unchallenged. So we are challenging our stand, and I hope we come out with good colors. Thank you very much for watching.